Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we have ourselves a track from an act named JS Slayer titled Feverdream off of the Identity Crisis 2 EP. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the EP on Bandcamp. We'll get that art nice and big up on the screen for you. We've got Rock and Roll and Sick, Wired, and Feverdream. Identity Crisis 2, and this time it's personal. So this is looking really interesting. It's my first time listening through their stuff, and we're going to listen through this track from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Feverdream, let's go. What do we got? It's so carefully textured.
Trying not to forget that I'm alive, 'cause I have bled. Open up your eyes to weeping sanguine skies. I wish that I could vibrate, but fear that I might burst. The third side of a coin, blessed and cursed. Open up your eyes to weeping skies.
Incredibly
Anxious, worried, are you afraid you're losing your grip? You may not know it, but that's good.
A ghost, a shadow, a fog of nothing at all. A dream, a fever, a stern believer when leaves start to fall. The earth's crust is an eggshell, and the chasm is deep. Tear the curtains from the windows, or I'll suffocate in my sleep. Open up your eyes to sanguine skies.
Do you feel blame? Are you mad? Do you feel like talking about revenge? Your friend is
A ghost, a shadow, a fog of nothing at all. A dream, a fever, a stern believer when leaves start to fall. Life is not a fever dream.
It's crazy how much variety there's been within this track.
I know I can't help but strive. There's no joy in a cold life.
This one was a tricky one, but we're going to talk about it more in the conclusion. A good kind of tricky. I just want to sort of collect my thoughts and we'll discuss it in a moment. So I think at face value, this track is talking about a fever dream. We talk about near the end them discussing, the vocalist discussing falling in and out of themselves, almost like they're within a dream or like life is a dream. You have various sort of samples of people asking them how they feel, whether they're fearful or like they're sad or they're angry or whatever, you know. We also have a mention of like sanguine skies at some point, so opening our eyes up to those as if to insinuate that when we are either awake or coherent or not, we are seeing them almost like we're seeing a hidden truth through the fever dream. And if we're trying to sort of relate it to an identity crisis, it could simply be that our fever dream is causing us to sort of maybe overcorrect or like revisit ourselves and figure out who we are. Like he says, I wish that I could vibrate, but I fear that I could burn. So maybe we're also talking about our feelings within those dreams. I'm not sure. There's probably more context to it, more nuance. I probably need another go through it to kind of really sort of figure it out or feel it out. But it's an interesting story nonetheless. I think that when the vocals come in, they tell the story neatly. It's nice to have different verses and chorus peppered through the piece and on top of different motifs at different tempos and different sort of like grooves with different guitar points and bass lines and stuff as we'll discuss in a moment. But it's also kind of cool to not have the vocals come in too early. We simply have a lot of the instrumental backing to kind of introduce us to their piece. You know, we have the kicks coming in with the chord no grooves there, and then we have this kind of synth picking up and then the guitars. And then, if I'm not mistaken, we've got the warring kind of repeating itself after that, the sample, before we go into J.S. Slayer sort of speaking their truth. And it's just, there's such interesting structural decisions made here, but on the topic of actual communication on the mic, etc. I think that we sing well. It's not an overly virtuosic performance in the sense that I don't think we were trying to overperform it. We were singing in a way where we were melodic and we caught the notes really neatly, and I think that most of the words came through really well. And I was happy with how we harmonized with the rest of the arrangements within quite a complicated composition. You know, we talk about trying to remember, try not to forget. Opening the song with that practically, it simplifies and opens the door to a lot of different concepts, and especially after that kind of trippy intro with the warbling of the warring and things kind of building up like that. It's such a complicated progressive piece, because outside of the competent vocal performance that I think alongside those different samples and vocal lines and phrasings did sort of like flesh out the story quite neatly, even though it offered a little bit of sort of like a reasonable amount of ambiguity to like the specific meaning. It's really the instrumental parts within this piece that I appreciate the most in the way they've been structured together. No two parts of the song are the same. You have a wide variety of different sort of like drum beats and guitar parts there, and there's lots of different chapters that we traverse throughout this 4 minutes 45 with absolutely no filler. Like within the first 20 seconds or 30 seconds, you come into this almost sort of like toolish like idea with these repeated kind of guitar melodies and arpeggios on the sides there, with things building and crescendoing the bass and the bottom rolling with those 8/4 and 8ths there. The tom fills kind of adding a bit of drama and suspense to it. But then we absolutely flip the script with that bass riff afterwards. Like I talking about the duality and his belief of personal freedom, you just have this really groovy, funky bass line after that introduction where it adds some offbeat hi-hats and just goes in a completely different journey, almost as if we are specifically designing different guitar riffs, bass grooves, and beats to suit the sample or the thing we're discussing, which I think makes kind of sense. It's very creative. But it's very much more somber when we come back in with J.S. Slayer's main vocals, I think. And so I think that's the best way to describe the structure of this piece alongside a lot of the instrumental decisions with those main few. It's that we are taking a journey and adjusting the literal feel of it, the literal intent and concept, depending on what we're hearing, depending on what person is singing or speaking. And I feel like it's a very different way to doing music that I'm used to, but I kind of dig the exploration of that. So a bit avant-garde, but like not in the way that's detrimental or kind of confusing to people, you know. But I think it's also testament to their skill as a musician for them to be able to go from dun, da, dun, dun 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 dun, dun kind of to go between these efforts, whether to speed up certain hits on like the cymbals or the kicks or snares or something to kind of mirror that new tempo, or different sort of triplet focus or eighth or halftime focus, to be able to go between those so neatly in a way that almost seems like you are ramping up and down, but it isn't affronting. To be able to go transfer between those so seamlessly. I think part of it is that we work within a similar key signature for a lot of it, but I think that we do switch scale choices and stuff. There's some bluesy orients in some parts and some more sort of traditional diatonics in others. But there are some chromatics, so there's some interesting bam 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 kind of like funky bits on the distorted guitars there, which add a bit of sizzle and sass to it and make it a bit more exciting there as well. We're not just strictly sticking with the major or minor scales, we're moving around with different functions and maybe trying to use these alternate notes outside of the main few to add a bit of chaos and show again more of a connection to the lyrics and story. But I think just individually, the comps are like the dance groove going potentially through a state of melancholy, or the more sort of like cinematic kind of intro, but going into that bass line there, almost like we're building into a show of some kind. To then contrast all of that with a very sort of meditative outro for this EP, it being the last track on it, where you've got the kind of 6/8 feeling to the the acoustic guitar DI on the sides. We're talking about cold days and cold nights, and we have these beautiful, wonderful shifting root notes to kind of have a very sort of fluffy, sort of like folk pop kind of 60s feel to it. Like there's no joy in a cold life. We're just kind of maybe going through all that to get to the point where we discover that there's no joy in the cold life. So what I've just basically come to the conclusion now is that through this fever dream, we've had all these awakenings, and we're now at a point where we can kind of accept who we are maybe and what we need to do in order to get to where we need to be. And I enjoy that. I think it's a very sort of organic, authentic sounding piece there. The acoustic like focus there makes complete sense. It's not overproduced. I think the individual guitar parts, whether it's sort of fingerstyle or plucked sort of arpeggios or strummed there, or the more sort of single string or power chord or octave up sort of distorted stuff, whatever kind of we're doing with the guitars, whether they're fuzzy or clean, just sounds gorgeous for the most part. And you know, you got a wide variety of different genres and styles within this piece, accounting for, again, literal tempo and sort of like time signature, maybe even key shifts. But it's almost like having that ending justifies it. And then you have that kind of sus-2 ending there where like it's very final and finite, and you have the bass kind of letting you out, and you kind of wonder what's occurred. And I do think with a song like this, you need multiple listens in order to really sort of feel it out. But ultimately, I feel like there's enough variety and polish on the various drum, guitar, and bass parts, as well as any other moments or any other sample elements added for there to be a sense of cohesion to it. I think the overall theme is again suited towards the sort of like chapterization of the different concepts discussed within the piece there, while we're talking about how that sort of funk or blues or sort of folkish feel suits the meditative stance that we're approaching throughout a fever dream. With those in mind there, the chord choices, etc., that follow their mixture of major minor, sort of like dom sevenths and sus2s and inverteds and other chromatics. It's good stuff, and ultimately it's just interesting to listen to. So ultimately, you get through all of this, and you get to the end where it's just the studio recording, mixing, and mastering. And my comments on that are generally that I think it's wonderful. I think that aside from maybe a little bit of releveling that could be done to kind of get some of the sample elements and stuff to be sort of level with some of the main sort of vocal parts in the mix. Everything else was sensational. You could follow along with it. It was almost like a dream sequence in a sense. The vocals in general were recorded well and captured well, and I think that, again, as I mentioned, we haven't overproduced it. They're dry, but they suit the tone, texture, and timbre of those guitar parts, a lot of those more acoustic elements, I think, a bit better because of that. I think that, again, the bass and drums are solid as well. And I think that, again, it's the variety of different ideas that makes this track special, even if there's a bit of chaos in there with all the twists and turns. And so that is supported by, again, solid EQing and positioning of things around the stereo field as well. And I think as well, just to comment, there's one part where the vocals are on the side and then they kind of call and respond to this part. Da, 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 da. I think that sound design choice with the panning of it is very, very good as well. So we show a bit of nuance and some advanced sort of like functionality there. And I think that it's a very creative song that, if the rest of the EP is anything to go by, means this is a very positive first impression for Jay Slayer's work, because his dynamic range is nice and loud without pumping. and in general, the performance had a great chemistry to it. And effectively, that's my review of this track from an actor named J.S. Slayer titled Feverdream off of the Identity Crisis 2 EP, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via the various social medias and the Bandcamp page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever. Thought of crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.